Where that echo was, but it's not going to matter. Kirk on the flank finds it down onto one. Riot's already down, so it's a technical 1 versus 2. And Bry just swung to his death. Twizzler on the top floor will look to retrieve their teammate, but Kirk can find the timing and clutch it out. An ace for Kirk.
But Spider still gets a kill, and then Xer not ready for him in the corner, but oh my goodness, he gets the kill anyways! He gets the kill, Teddy left alive. He does it yet again for Mirage! He's low on health, especially when the Vulcan canisters are in play, but now Ambi low as well, but he takes the kill anyways! He's still left, but with 15 seconds and not too much intel as to where they are, it's not looking great for him, but he's just got the isolated frag on aim key, and the last one's left in Freezer. This could be a very easy pick to find if he just looks in the right corners with the shotgun as well. He'll be lethal in the close range. A 1-on-2 for the Gridlock.
What's up and welcome back, fellow Siege spectators and players. It's the Xenon and Gaming series and we're into the playoffs. Tonight I am Whiskey Glitter and joining me on the desk is Chaco. What's happening, Chaco?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get into playoffs for the very first time. Of course, we're still in our quarterfinals. We're still in the quarterfinals, still getting ready for which team we'll be seeing for playoffs. Of course, next is then the semis, which Fluffy, MKERS, and Mormon Battalion are already confirmed for. And then we're covering MKERS versus KARN Whiskey, and I'm excited to get right into it because then that means that either one of these teams could just be our grand finalists just by judging off of their names.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are here where the magic is happening, and this is going to be a very great game as well, right? Because, I mean, we're taking on today MKERS versus KARN & Co., the winner moving on to face Mormon Battalion, and it's kind of like this fun split between traditional and contemporary Siege. Let's take a quick look at the rosters that we've got going on. Who is playing this evening for the side of MKERS? Bino, Itty, Adam, Packer, and I believe there was and Hitman. There we go. Gonna be a fun one. What do you think about the lineup here?
I actually thought it was Center, not Hitman, so that's actually correct.
I thought that was the case too, but I wasn't sure.
No, it is. It is. Center is playing in place of Hitman tonight. Of course, that means that Tristan, who was playing for MKERS throughout the middle of XGS Season 7, and then over the weekend, just last weekend in a wildcard restart tournament, isn't going to be making an appearance here for MKERS. He was a big reason as to why, as well, that MKERS had such big success against OXG, but also almost took SSG 2-3 maps going into that infinite overtime game on Lair against SSG, who were the eventual champions of the wildcard restart tournament. You take a look at their attacking stats. That's not the only thing that looks good about them, Whiskey.
No, not at all. I mean, it's obviously they're getting great at being super successful on the attack side of it. They're incredibly aggressive, hitting the gaps quickly, able to find those mistakes and really capitalize on them. And it shows in the stat lines, right? We're seeing it both on the attack and the defensive side. That 73% on their defense is just absolutely huge.
Yep, and on the defense, they play more around their utility and on just wasting time, whereas on the attack, like you mentioned, they prioritize finding gaps, but also the entry engagements. And now they do have an opponent here today, so while we can talk very good about MKERS, KARN & Co. makes an entrance into the building tonight for their very first appearance into playoffs for XGS Season 7.
And so on the team, Carnage, Asian, Nick, Rice, and Vertical. Obviously, quite a few names that you know and love. This is a KARN & Co. that we have seen be very successful, albeit had a little bit of a couple of rough starts, right? They've been playing that traditional Siege role, and you can tell it in the time that it takes for those opening picks or for that setup for the objective style gameplay to even come through.
Yeah, rocky group stage for KARN & Co. And then they also had an even tougher time over the weekend in the wildcard restart tournament. They didn't even get past the first round, right? They had to play against a pro league team in a wildcard, and that was a dominant 2-0 loss for wildcard, 7-2 on both of the maps in a best of 3. And then you come into Xenon, where on the first 2 days, KARN & Co. lost both of their opening games, and even then they had to play an extra match in the play-ins to get here because they lost 7-1 on the final day to Wildcard Aces, which put them in the 4th place spot, and it couldn't automatically qualify for a playoff. So KARN & Co., ever since the start of group stages of Element 3, has had a really tough time not only in T2, but also against T3 teams like the Unks, for example, who just got knocked out yesterday. But their stat line is pretty decent, but you compare that to MKERS, and it just doesn't look that good.
Yeah, it turns into a real David versus Goliath situation here. Just alone, I mean, entry splits, the conversion rates. Chaka, walk us through this because some of these stats are staggering.
Yep, so they're positive on their entry splits. Karnico isn't. They also have a higher conversion rate, and their recovery rate is actually insane. Like, basically, if you guys don't know what the recovery rate means, it means that once you lose the opening pick, what's your chances of actually winning the round and bringing it back into your favor? And for MKERS, that's a 76%. For Karnico, they're one of the lowest teams in their recovery percentages. So that tells us that going into the night, because of how good MKERS are on the entry game and also their conversion rate, Karnico does have a positive conversion rate too. They have to prioritize and fix their entry engagements to actually have a chance against a team like MKERS.
So looking to see a little bit more of that buddy system in play, a little bit of that refrag potential to be just a little bit closer, right? Some communication issues hopefully solved, and we can see a little bit closer, maybe a little bit bump up in the stat line. But got a couple of players that we're going to be specifically looking at tonight, some real impact players for these teams. Adam versus Vertical, right? And these are, of course, both names that you know real well. Adam, just an absolute gunner, incredible cost rate. Entry is 6-1. But the big part, I think the big highlight, and this is what you were talking to me about before the show, is that survival percentage, right?
Yeah. So basically means your ability to survive throughout the whole entire round. Adam has the highest survivability rate on his team, and that's as an entry player. Like, usually when you think of survivability, you think about somebody who's like the main anchor or support player who's like planting the bomb, or somebody who's staying on site as the smoke to clutch up. But for Adam, his impact is felt throughout the whole entire round because of his ability to stay alive and also find the opening picks here for MKERS. And the one thing that we talked about, Whiskey, just behind the scenes, is the fact that with Adam specifically, he had to come into a situation where he was replacing one of the best T2 players that we've ever seen in Kobe Lax, who's gotten offered for Pro League teams. And now he's coming into this MKERS lineup, and it doesn't even feel like he's a brand new player. It feels like he fits right into this aggressive system, and he fits into the system of them wanting to prioritize the entry picks and also being very, very successful for them.
Right, so showcasing these two head-to-head, right? We've seen Vertical be just an absolutely devastating and impactful player, but the deal is he's got to show up, right? Had a bit of a rocky start, but when he's there, the team is on fire. So that's kind of what we're hoping, kind of what we're looking to see tonight, is these two players really just showcase their abilities here into the quarterfinals.
Yep, I mean, it's going to be pretty tough because, like, for Adam, he's the entry player, but for Vertical, he has kind of like divested from the entry slightly as he's moved on to teams like Wildcard, for example. And then now going on to Karnico, he's had to play operators like Warden, Thatcher, for example, not your typical entry operators, but he's still like the better player in terms of his entry engagements on the team. That's why, even though I wanted to highlight Vertical, I do want to talk about other players on the team. For example, Asian, who's not doing so well. I think he's the lowest rated player on this team, and he has the worst entry stats and survivability rate out of all of them. So while Vertical does need to show up, you do need your primary entry and Asian who's playing operators like your Ash and Azami to show up as well, because MKERS have a full 5 stack of talented players on that team who can frag out at any moment. Karnico really need to like meet them where MKERS are good at.
That's right, and it's a best of 3 today, right? Not a best of 1 sprint. Let's take a quick look at where we're going to be headed. First taken off the board is going to be Cafe Chalet, followed up with Skyscraper and Lair. Dang, no Lair for us tonight, Chaka. Which means our first 2 picks are going to be Clubhouse and Consulate, which obviously super fun maps, right? A standard, and then putting us into one of the new maps. Takeout Bank, Bank Night Haven. Wait a minute. I think that's supposed to be border taken out, right? Instead of
yeah,
bank.
that's no, Bank is the decider, but that is supposed to be border as the last map. I don't know why Bank is there. Okay. Well, technically Bank is the last. That's completely fine. That's all right. We don't really care. But what we do know is that our first or our 3 maps are going to be Club, Consulate, and Bank last. With Club starting out first, I don't remember Makers playing this map a whole bunch, but we already know, especially with KARN playing this match in their play-in game against Team Sesh, and also just having a history on Clubhouse as well. This is a very good map for KARN & Co. They're a very structured team, very old school style. They like to take it slow and set up. Clubhouse is going to benefit them a lot. So we're going to have to see, we're probably going to see Makers, especially with the way that they like to play their defenses, go for these heavy roam extensions, play around a lot of utility to try and deny KARN & Co. from setting up for as long as they possibly can.
And that's definitely going to start to play into their favor as well, right? Because you talked about how the opening pick being on the defense is a little bit slower for Makers. So it's going to give KARN & Co. that chance to kind of start to try to set up some of that traditional siege play and get, like you said, a little protect the president, get some objective style gameplay going down. This is a perfect map to showcase that. So if we can see them step up and get real active on the first map, man, we might just have a chance here in this best of 3.
Yep. Also, fun fact, KARN & Co. and Makers over the last few months, including Element 3 appearances and in the Wildcard Restart tournament in the qualifiers, they've played Makers a total of 2 times. So they had a very close loss on the final day of the Element 3 group stages, which Makers eventually won Element 3. That was at 8-7 on Labs, I believe. And then in the Wildcard Restart tournament in the qualifiers, KARN & Co. actually beat them in a best of 3 series, where the last 2 maps ended in a 7-5 scoreline in favor of KARN & Co. So you do have some history with both of these rosters, with Makers seemingly having some issues potentially with playing up against KARN & Co. and having these more closer games where you would expect them to be slightly more dominant.
Yeah, okay. So, win condition here, we're talking. We need to see KARN & Co. get active a little bit earlier, especially on those impact players. And we're going to need to see that they're able to deal with those huge extensions that are going to be coming to Clubhouse, including playing basement all the way up onto the 2nd floor, which is, of course, one of the highlights of Clubhouse. I'm excited for it. I think this first map is going to kind of really set the pace here for these back 2. And I think Clubhouse is to do it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it as well, and I want to really because I believe since this is KARN & Co.'s picks, yes, Makers decide to start off on the defensive side. I mentioned slightly earlier that for Makers, with the way that they like to set up their defenses, especially what was evident against SSG on their lair game, they like to play around a bunch of utility. They like to go for late flanks. Clubhouse is certainly the map that sets you up to do that, especially for extensive roam games. If you're playing in basement, for example, you can extend up top to the 2nd floor, play a bandit on the platform wall and bandit trick and waste a lot of time and utility for KARN & Co., who, when it comes to the site execution, if patches are still up, if the triple wall is still reinforced, for example, they probably will not have the utility to do it, especially if they're spending all of their time in utility trying to clear the 2nd to the 1st floor where Makers are extending up top. So that'll be pretty interesting to see what Makers incorporate on their defenses, of course, but also how will KARN & Co. work around it? Because when KARN & Co. in previous games in XGS Season 7 have had issues and have had problems that they've encountered, they couldn't quite work around it.
Yeah, I think that was the big problem, right? They took so long in getting themselves set up for it, and especially if they got that first obstacle, then there wasn't much of a redirect. There wasn't much of a sit back, rethink your strategy, and then push from the secondary area. So that's really kind of what we're going to be looking for this evening. But while we are still getting folks into the lobby, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to bring you the first map. What's up and welcome back. All players in the lobby, which means this best of 3 is good to kick off here for the quarterfinals. Jocko, we got some bans. Do you think they're going to be pretty standard?
I would think so. For both teams, Makers and Karnico tend to like stick more to the basics. That's not necessarily basic, but it makes sense in the sense of Clubhouse. Habana is really good at opening up the hatches. This is going to make it easier for Makers come their defensive half. And like we mentioned before, Karnico are a really good team are a decent team that take the time to set up and work around their utility. Taking away Habana means that you have less utility to work with. You have less utility to get the hatches open.
Absolutely. You called it. You said if the hatches are still closed, then they went exactly for it. I love it. Monty Band to follow it up because obviously, right, the huge push up towards Catwalk, any sort of dirt presence, that hatch drop from Kitchen, huge. We put Cade off also onto the band, which means going to be able to get them open whether or not you die to a C4 or not, of course, will be the big determining factor. And then the last, the architect, Azami. She's just so versatile in being such one of those pace operators, holding on to Gym Bedroom, holding on to the catwalk, holding on to that area near dirt, and she's going to be taken off the board.
And it's going to be Makers to start us off with the defensive side of things, of course, because this is Karnico's map pick. Makers decide to pick into the defense, and already looking at the operator lineup, we have the Mirror, we have the Smoke, Vigil, and Jaeger and Muse. So, of course, with the Vigil, they're going to be trying to extend up above, playing around a late flank potentially, with Giddy playing all the way upstairs, using his cloak in order to deny drones for as long as possible the information gathering tools for Karnico. And maybe if Karnico slip up, he'll be able to capitalize off of it with the late flank, because Karn, because they are a very structured team, will sometimes maybe leave gaps and openings that they may not even know that they have opened up against them.
Yeah, I like this defensive setup. A little bit of the standard, right? We're going to see, of course, the mute to get rid of that intel, which, of course, is one of those things that's so vital for setting up. A quick peek, though, from Vigil, not going to amount to a kill, but definitely puts it in the headspace that they're going to get a little bit more aggressive on the defense than we've previously seen. On the other side of it, a little bit of a two-pronged approach here. So they're bringing double on the hard breach and Jackal to hunt down that elusive Vigil.
It's going to be on the other side of the map, though, going over by Garage, and you can tell Karnico are just waiting and droning in patiently just to see where they can make their primary entry from. Of course, Packer is still upstairs, and Karnico haven't quite figured that out, but it looks like Asian might make a sneak up on him just from the Raptors' position, and already Packer finds that very first pick onto Rice.
Yeah, huge pick, taking the ace off the board, stands alone now on the catwalk, and they know, right? They've sent it open, going to open with a C4, push himself around, but he is going to find the shot as Asian's going to take Packer down, and that's going to equalize on the man count here, but puts a little bit of pressure on, because now to get those hatches open, you're either going to have to be relying on those can openers or the thermite charges. So a little bit tougher here. We've got Adam facing off against Asian Peers. They start to make their way in towards the kennel area, start to put some pressure onto those stairs and get some of that verticality opened up.
Yeah, also losing the ace means that going for the church execute is going to be a little bit more difficult, because you can't get the triple wall open just from the bottom of main stairs. So like you said, they have less to work with, and that means they have to prioritize what they actually want to get open. Of course, you have 3 hatches, and they only have 3 ways of opening up those hatches with just the hard breach charges that they have in the back pocket of Nick, but also what they have in Carnage B. And they still haven't necessarily cleared out Giddy, who it looks like they have a clue that he's here, but they're not entirely confident of that fact. So Karnico, now with about a minute, haven't even fully cleared the roam here from Makers.
And there they do get eyes onto the Vigil as the Jackal starts to ping him out. Start looking through the punch holes, but not going to find anything. It's going to be Bino with a C4 to grab Carnage off the board and solidify that man advantage here as they take another shot around Giddy to find Nick, and that was such a huge play. Now puts him into a 4v2. A 3v2 as they're able to answer back Asian to find that kill. But it's a low health scenario now for the Jackal. It's 30 seconds left, and the exact thing that you were talking about in the pre-show is playing out. No vertical presence to be had, no way to open up those walls, and now the smokes really starting to do their devastating effect and hold them at the base of the stairs here. So 14 seconds, gonna open up, try to find a little bit of that verticality and stop it, but it's a little bit of a too little, too late scenario. Now, it does push into that church wall through the smoke. Looking to see if he's going to be able to capitalize from the back, and it's going to be a shotgun to swing around. They're going to be able to find it as vertical takes Bino, center takes Asian off the board.
First round goes in favor of the Makers on the defensive side of things here on Clubhouse. Karnico's own map pick. You can tell Karnico had a really big issue with trying to clear out the roamers for Makers who were stuck in very tricky positions behind the mute jammers, and that slowed down the information gathering process for Karnico when they were trying to go for their initial roam clear. They also just lost a lot of bodies on the way because a lot of those kills that happened in favor of Makers were very isolated picks, with Karnico not really working together to pinch out roamers that they had no information on. So Makers did a very good job of wasting time, isolating players, but also whittling down a utility game for Karnico, who were eventually left much weaker when it came to the execution phase. They hadn't even gotten any hatches open, and they had no utility to get triple wall open neither. So the early round worked wonders there for Makers as they take that very first round.
Right, we were hoping to see the adaptation come from Karnico, and instead it was Makers putting themselves onto the aggressive start for it, and to try to bump up that defensive opening kill stat. So take it up to the gym bedroom, and going to go with kind of a similar lineup, right? We're still going to bring along the mute for that breach denial. No dedicated hard or breach denial though. So kind of resting yet again on sending Giddy out to cause that disruption, get some of that early aggression, and slow down Karnico a little bit more than they were already slowed down. It's going to be a very similar setup on the attack side of it. Two-pronged approach. They are bringing the Thatcher along. I think the one highlight here that could be very beneficial, and it's one that we love to see on Gym Bedroom, is the Florist. Going to start to get rid of some of that extension util, some of that extension gadgetry that has been so decisive for Makers.
Yeah, the only thing here, though, is that Makers don't really have any utility for Karnico to try and destroy. Like, it's just Nitro Cells and Impacts, no deployable shields on the red stairway, for example. So this is probably just like a lack of info for Karnico on what the exact lineup here is for Makers, or even just Karnico having a default idea of how this site works and this extension from Makers would work, or any other team, and just bringing a default lineup on top of that. They don't really have much to try and clear this. Well, I mean, they could probably use the EMPs to try and disable some of the gadgetry here, but again, it's going to be made very difficult because it just kind of like fit in a Flores here when they didn't really need to.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Thought maybe that Warden had the shield, but you're right. It's C4s all day, and one is primed, prepped, and ready to send it onto that main breach. You see the EMPs going out as they're going to start to open up that wall. It's a classic take here, right? Open up CCTV, open up hot tub, and open up construction, and then send it. Giddy is going to be the first to be taken off the board. That is going to give the man advantage over to Karn & Co., which is a great way for them to start. And that's going to be the second to be found, as a Packer not even looking in the direction from where it came from. So now pushing them back to site, finds ourselves in a 5v3 Chaka, and gonna have to rely on some of those mirrors.
Yep, lurk down below. Nick getting that opening entry pick onto Giddy gives him full control around the lounge area, and so that forces Makers to kind of back off and even expose themselves in very weird positions. Packer gets cut off too, and that gives full control over to Karnico over by the cash and construction side. And you can see for Makers, they're just in really weird positions, yes, but also Karnico might not expect this. They're also in very uncomfortable positions as well. Karnico also, on that extensive roam clear that they did, have really like no drones to work with and little information to capitalize off of.
Okay, so 30 seconds left as we start to see them get themselves ready for some of that protect the president play, potentially get inside to get that plant going down. We do have coming up the red main stair here, trying to take a look towards that main breach into the Logi, is going to find the kill, and that's going to be Vertical taking Adam down, and that's the plant going down as Carnage also takes it. It's going to be a flawless round for Karn & Co. as they answer back pretty decisive.
And really good clear over by the CCTV cache area, going for that below flank and then making it very hard for Makers once they did garner that control, because then the red stairs player can't really effectively play there. He either gets swinged from the open breach or somebody lurks on him on the red stairs at the same time that somebody swings from the open breach. And so Karnico gets some really good control over by Cash and CCTV. It makes it much easier to go for that execute, especially once they get control elsewhere. And I think what Karnico did very, very well in that round, compared to the previous, is that they just attacked as a team, and they also just made very good use of going down below and going for these late flanks that makers aren't necessarily expecting, and making makers uncomfortable on those extensive plays. And then later on in the round, when they're playing on site to try and deny the execute there from KARN. We do have a tech pause here, so just for a little bit, we're here to just kind of like waffle on slightly. But even then, very good round coming in from Karnico after the first round that we saw from makers.
From being defused by attackers.
Yeah, CCTV Cache is going to be the site of choice here for makers. So they bring the bandit this time around as well to try and bandit trick and soak up as much utility from Karnico on the platform wall and just continue to try and waste more time. And it's also very interesting that in this round they bring the castle as well to prolong a hold over by the first floor, further protect the garage play, and again further disrupt Karnico, who want to try and take key control of certain areas of the map to make their execute so much easier. Again, Karnico bring the floors in this lineup, and it's very interesting that for the CCTV and Cache site, maybe thinking that makers would go for a repeat of gym and bedroom, they don't decide to bring more not time waste utility, but more utility like your capitals and stuff like that to make going for the garage clear that much easier. Maybe thinking the flourish drones will just do the job, and maybe that'll be enough here for Karnico. But again, just looking at the utility game here for them, it makes it very worrying for what their plans might be just for the garage area.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me?
Bomb located
Here.
by attackers.
Let's go.
Platform breach open. Also, Karnico at the same time working the construction breach too. And at the same time as well, KARN are going for an attack towards the construction area. So this may not just be the default take that we see over by platform and garage. It's more of a clear from gym and bedroom going into construction, and then hoping they can work something in the cache site. But the big issue is going to be that garage player, and you can hold them at bay from either the ventilation window or even just the platform breach.
Yeah, so as we're seeing it though, time is starting to tick down, right? This is what we talked about, but it's still a 5-5 scenario. So even though this is still the game style that we've expected to see out of KARN & Co., it's really going to start to put pressure on. Able to bandit trick the single wall, which is going to be able to hold that closed just a little bit longer, really starting to delay it out. 61 seconds left, and we're still sitting 5-5.
Yeah, they haven't gotten the breach open. There's nobody outside the platform breach neither, so I wonder what their plan is to try and get this open. It seems like they're going to just send the EMP in, and hopefully that's going to reach the EMP or the wall. The construction single wall vertical just jumps right on in, pops the head of Giddy. And a Raptors player can't do anything because of the nice flash play there from KARN & Co. Nick finds a second. KARN & Co. just try and make an attack work from the only window in sight, but a retake into construction plus Bino in the middle of Cash. Finding a kill puts makers back in the swing of things. So KARN & Co., they find two off of the back of it. A 3v1 now turns into a 2v1. Packer all alone, all in the Logi area. And the last two players alive don't even have diffusers, so they're forced to push him. Diffuser's actually in construction. He takes out Asian, who gets a little bit overzealous, and the last player alive is a 3 HP Carnage B. He grabs the diffuser back. He's going to try and plant it, but with minimal time left, Packer has all the time to work against him. He doesn't know he's in a specific corner, and he should probably win his gunfight with the super shorty, but he can't do that. Carnage wins the 1v1 gunfight despite the health disadvantage and a close range close range battle with the super shorty.
Man, 3 HP and a dream, and that's exactly what happened. And now KARN and Co. find themselves up in the scoreline. They're up 2-1. Makers kind of looked a little silly up there on the top end. They did it. It was a great job at holding it out, but when it came to the execute, it was just the buddy system in play, trades across the board and down into a 1v1 with a super great, a very heads up play in the corner to be able to swing and take it. What a huge round for KARN and Co.
Yep. It's also good utility play as well for Carnico to just, like I said, use the window inside of ventilation to cut off that garage player. They didn't even necessarily need the platform breach to do that. And the way that they did it was not by getting a kill, but rather just by flashing. And that allowed actual entry pick to isolate Nick, who was not Nick, but Giddy playing as the bandit inside of sight, who had no other help besides the garage player watching the window. And I like that little bit of play from Carnico, who over a few weeks have just kind of like gelled more together as a team and generally have looked better despite the early 2 rough play days that they had against both Thrive and Youngs.
Yeah, well, this is a team that we know can be successful, right? Even with a little bit of rotation on the rosters, they've got the ability to be a good team, and every player on there has got that frag potential, and that's exactly what we were just watching there. So, take it back down to the basement as the round rotate has solidified itself, and they're going to try it again, and this time going to bring a little bit of breach denial to it, as we're going to see the bandit utilized here as well. So going to be a big focus on keeping those mirror windows alive, and of course that triple wall stopping them from the plant. No vigil on the board. The floor. That'll be a little bit tougher to deal with, but they've seen this look before.
If the Nation's already first one in, it's going to force Packer to just walk off of anything. And to be fair, he wastes nothing next to time, and he also pops the Nitro Star early, thinking that potentially Nick was going to go down the stairs very, very quickly and put himself in a position where he's going to get nitroed. Renico don't lose the opening pick and gain a lot of map control off of it. Maker's not going for that extensive roam game that they had with 2 players on different sides of the map, playing off of the information denial and then catching Carnico off guard, and rather that gives Carnico a lot of map control, a lot of time to set themselves up, get the hatches open, and then work out and execute. They also still have their ace alive, so triple wall may not be as far away from getting open here from Carnico as it was in the first round when they lost the ace early on.
Yeah, and this is a setup that's going to allow that objective style play to be really useful, right? Smokes, fires, EMPs, the Candelas, already putting a bunch of vertical presence here as they start to get into the kitchen area to start opening up those hatches, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Selma Charge is going to open up into kitchen and start to put some pressure on down below. We're still, yet again, Chuck, it's 60 seconds left, and we're finding ourselves still in a 5v5, having to deal with these mirrors, having to deal with the smokes that are still alive. Still 3 in it, so even the drop is going to be tough. 49 now as they're going to find that first opening kill. It is going to be Mute getting taken down. It's going to give the body balance tipped in favor of Carnico, and here we're going to start to see some of that gadget play come out. Puts the Yin Candelas onto the mirror, but it's the Warden, so he's ready for it, and a little bit of smoke as the self-troll a little bit starts to go through. Adam takes Asian off the board, and that's going to be Giddy getting taken down next, putting us into a 4v3. 26 seconds. Puck starts to open up into the other side, but it's a C4 onto Rice that's going to equalize the man count here. 19 seconds left, and they've made their way into sight. Relatively unknown, right? He's sitting in the back of the site, and he's going to get this pick onto dirt, except for he wasn't there for it. Bino takes Carnage off the board, now puts the pressure onto Makers as they find themselves, or onto Carnico as they find themselves with 1 player left alive, and it's the crossfire that's going to claim him. Adam's going to take Nick off.
Yeah, despite the utility dump through blue and successfully clearing out the only player in Jin holding that position off, Carnico just couldn't necessarily work off and execute. And I think the reason why was because even though they pushed off the Warden off of the blue mirror, he was still a very big problem for Carnico when it came to that hatch drop. And Carnico, at the end of it, just didn't really look too together for that execution phase. Again, it kind of like signals what the first round was. And instead of it being in the early round for Carnico, where players were just like easily isolated and they lost those opening few picks and they just couldn't recover the round back, that time Carnico actually did get the opening pick, but then looked extremely fragmented when it came to the late round, when players were just kind of like dropping down a hatch individually, somebody solo taking through Moto, but they couldn't really work out how to execute the kitchen. I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't even think they got the kitchen hatch open from what I remember. So it was a good job on Makers to go for that bunker heavy strategy, which originally didn't look like it worked, but they at the end they made up for it just by using their own utility to try and limit Karnico's options for their entry points.
And it worked out absolutely beautiful. So now they take it up to Gym and Bedroom as we stay tied up here, 2-2, going into round number 5, and we're going to see a little bit of a switch up of direction here for Makers, right? Going to see a little bit more of those pace setters coming out, specifically being the Castle and the Malusi. Malusi recently getting that upgrade that gives her now 4 Banshee charges, or 4 Banshees, just makes that gadget play that you've been talking about so incredibly useful and cover a huge amount of difference here. So it's a great adaptation, and it's, I mean, not unexpected here for Gym Bedroom. On the other side of it, the highlight here, I think the Grim pick is going to make the difference. We saw them use those bees inside of blue, and they were able to find the players in there. If they would have had some of that from that kitchen hatch, where they had the intel on where those players were at, then the Buck, when he came back into the back of the site, could have been more of an impactful player and potentially changed the round out. So I like the Grim call if they can use it successfully.
Grim has a bunch of uses, especially for the second floor area, most namely for the bathroom position, as you mentioned too, and helping KARN and Co. really flesh out these players. But again, Makers get the opening pick, and it's on to Nick too, with the mirror window still up here for KARN and Co. They have or not KARN and Co. For Makers, they have more power positions that they can play behind, most namely the Gold Vault area and also bathroom, where KARN will most likely not get these mirror windows apart from maybe one Selma that can be thrown from Rice.
Yeah, and so you got to choose which one's going to be the worst of two evils here to try to make your final push in. This is the part where we've seen KARN and Co. struggle a little bit, is once their initial plan gets thrown off, right, then how do they redirect? Now, you're going to see Grim starting to make his way up the stairs, but it's a Banshee charge to make that sound cue and give away the location, so they've got an idea that he's creeping up. It's going to be the Logi swing here, potentially to take him off the board. Some flashes going through, holding on to the angle. Bino ready for the gunfight, and is going to win that handily. Rice does answer back, but Bino to take vertical down does put us into a 4v2 now. All of that pressure onto the hard breaches. That's going to be ace to fall. Last alive is going to be Thermite stuck on the highway windows, and Bino with the Vector going to clean that up nice and easy.
Again, this KARN and Co., like you mentioned, having a really rough time with trying to recover the round back once they do lose that opening pick. And of course, losing the opening pick does make a round harder because you're effectively a man down. You have less people that you can start and execute with. But for KARN and Co., they just, again, the issue that like they had in the first round where they sent individual players at the issue, a player going up main stairs. I think another player just like tried to drop down Logi Hatch, and then it was all individual players where KARN and Co. weren't necessarily working together to achieve the same goal. Individual players trying to exploit a gap that wasn't really there for Makers, who just won their individual gunfights, especially the Mira inside of Logi and Packer just winning both of those. And KARN and Co. just never could recover the round after that, losing that opening pick, and never bothered to try and work any intelligent picks after that. So now we're going into CCTV and Cash here for Makers. This is the last opportunity for KARN and Co. to get a round win on the attack, and we'll have to see, because so far the attacks haven't looked too bad from KARN and Co. They've actually looked solid.
Yeah, they're doing all of the right things, but it's something that you mentioned in the pre-show that I think is making the difference here, is on the side of Makers, every single one of those members is an absolute gunner, can be the impactful player. So taking those early gunfights, they're just going to have to win one or two of those to be able to be viable, and that's what we saw when they got their round win. So a little bit of a switch up. We are going to see the Valkyrie coming out in the game of Intel and Opportunity. Of course, Valkyrie is the queen. Then to start, kind of similar situation that we saw for the Gym Bedroom setup. Open up both sets of walls up top and construction, start to put some pressure on. Of course, we see the Capital on the board, who is going to try to force that player off the catwalk. Bandit able to successfully trick here off the help of the tuber out, which means it's going to stay closed just a little bit longer. Are they going to be able to open it? Going to get one of them. So it's going to turn it into a little bit of a head hole instead of being able to actually get into sight.
good utility usage as well from Makers to again limit the utility usage here for Carnicle. And while they will get, it seems like both walls. Oh no, they didn't. So they only just have this like line of sight. They can't fully entry off of that one wall, or they don't even really have a good cutoff even. Well, they have it on the right side actually, so you could cut off directly into the site. But the issue is you can't walk in from the platform wall to make an entry happen. So Carnicle are just gonna have to work off of that one little line of sight that could be threatening for Makers if any of them decide to go ahead and rotate in front of it. But it seems like Makers are gonna be, or Carnicle rather, are gonna be working this Raptors position using the Capital bonus.
Yep, and are going to be able to find the mirror off the catwalk, so that is going to give the body balance in favor of Karn and Co here. Minute and 13 left on the board for them to start working, and plan has been kind of going according to their plan, except for, of course, that main breach. So got that early pick. We'll see if they'll be able to capitalize off it here. We do still have Valkyrie in the bedroom, waiting to see if Capital is going to make his way back over to put some pressure towards that breach area. With the smokes or something to try and stop that gameplay. Giddy is going to find Nick off the board. Does take us into a 4-4. It's 48 seconds left as they start to open up from the catwalk. Give themselves a little place to walk in instead of having to vault through the window. And there's the smoke canister. Still have 2 in hand. That's really going to slow down this Karn and Co team, Chaka. We're sitting 4-4s. Capital gets taken off the board. 30 seconds left in which to do so in a C4 that is primed, prepped, and ready to stop the plan should they be able to do so. Lounge presence here from Thatcher. Going to start to make its way up the red staircase. Get rid of some of that extension util and put some pressure on from the backside as well. Hopping out the highway, gets himself a couple of pre-fires onto it. And it's going to lose his life as Carnage and Vertical both find kills. Now puts us into a 3-2. Tuberau taking a little bit of damage, but Adam able to find Vertical off the board, and that's the plan. Starting to go down. He's going to stick it at 20 HAP as IQ dies.
What?
Now he's the last alive. Pistol popping, body dropping. Adam able to find 3 of them to win the round for his team.
Huge round from Adam, killing the Raptors player, but also then killing the Breach player on top of that. And again, it's Carnico giving up isolated picks, but that time, I don't even really think they were very isolated. You have good cutoff positions from Carnico who are holding directly where they need to be, looking towards the red area, having the platform breach open and somebody just outside of that. And that's just insane from Adam to be able to get both of those picks and then find the third on top of that because he just killed the coverage for Carnage B in that post plant. That was realistically the only way that Makers would have won that round, because other than that, Carnico had everything checked off. They wasted a ton of utility that Makers just threw all at once despite the time working for them. They used up all the nitro cells as well from Makers, who were trying to use it for that exact plant that Carnico were working for. And they still just couldn't even really do that, and they won a round because of some individual play from Adam, and that's the most dangerous thing about this Makers team. Even when the round is lost, they can just do that, and it works.
And it worked beautifully. 4-2 on the half as we see a little bit of a standard split, and not necessarily the standard way you get there, but kind of all works out. Now we get to see what's Karn and Co going to bring to the defensive table, right? And already I kind of like how they're making a little bit of adaptation, right? You know that Makers is going to be aggressive. You know that they shoot the gap. You know that they're good at finding those plays to exploit. So what do? Bring out a couple of those pace setters. Castle for a little bit of that extension up into the bar area, and then Goyo to slow him down for any of the quick stuff coming in from that dirt area, potentially dropping down that kitchen hatch. I like this as the adaptation. Now, the only problem that I'm seeing here is that we only have one member actually down in sight, and if Makers becomes aware of that and gets a quick push in, it could be a terrible retake scenario here for the defense.
Yep, but be fair to Carnico, they do have all the hatches open, especially if they do have this heavy upstairs hold that they're going for. So they have a plan to retake site just in case Makers try to hit it directly, which means Makers will be forced into going for this roam clear. And it's already starting off really well for Carnico, who get the first pick onto one of the many operators that can help with this roam clear for against them.
Yeah, huge opening pick, and it happened early on. So, going to be a little bit of a redirect here for Makers as they start to push in towards that bar area. Does take a bunch of damage as Castle's reduced down to that 19 HP, but they're able to find the kill onto the Grim, taking us into a huge man advantage now for Karnico as they can start to work their way back down to site and just play the bunker strat from here on out. Able to find the kill onto Rice. What a shot! As Giddy takes his head off. Now does put us into that 4-3, but still, a lot of the pressure going on to Makers here. But they're just going to walk up anyways.
Yeah, and they could most likely get this triple wall open with the one exothermic charge that they do have. They've also just cleared out the first floor, so they do have an opportunity to do that. The only thing I can imagine giving them any issues, actually, no, Vertical doesn't have any impacts for this, so they could possibly just get this wall open, and then that makes Vertical's position inside of Church so much harder.
Center to find the kill on Vertical, and Asian dies now, puts us into a 3-2 as the plant starts to go down. You called it, walked in through Church and getting themselves ready for an execute. They're going to take Mute down. It's going to all be put onto the shoulders of Goyo, who put up a show right there at the end and almost was able to find the round for his team. Luckily, Giddy was there on the cross and save it.
Yeah, and even though Karnico had a very good start on that initial roam, getting the opening 2 picks, having some support over by Oil Pit so that the player in the lounge couldn't effectively kill the castle, and that castle could isolate the gunfight over by the strip club area, still was not enough for Karnico to be able to close out that round. And a big part of it was when they decided to bunker, they just kind of like left Vertical to die, and there was nobody to help support him inside of Church. So you have Vertical, who's in a very difficult position in the middle, in the middle of Church, just very much isolated. And once Makers just open up the one soft wall that looks directly into sight, Vertical's position was very much in danger, and they found that opening kill onto him. And then when somebody tried to refrag from blue, that person got killed by the player in Moto. So it was a very good opportunity or gap spot by Makers, who just said, let's just walk in from triple wall. That'll give Karnico a lot of issues, and it did.
Yeah, did all the way to the round win, which of course almost got brought back by Goyo, but it was a valiant attempt, but alas, they did not take it. So 5-2 is where we sit as we head into round number 8 to see Jim Bedroom next, and it's exactly what you think you would see, right? Castle to block off those highways. Of course, you need the Warden for those the attempt to get in for the smokes when they were planting on the last round. I mean, this is just a very traditional setup here for Jim Bedroom, and I hope it works. We're seeing Valkyrie all the way down in blue, so the potential to be the impact here, if not sussed out, already starting to make their way back up the garage as they open up the hot tub breach, start putting some pressure onto this mirror player.
Also going to be taking care of the mirror window quite easily too, because the bandit is on the other side of the map, and it didn't seem like they had anything for that bathroom wall unless it was already taken care of by an EMP. Either way, that removes a very powerful position inside a bathroom, and you can already tell Makers want to work the other side of the map to push KARN & Co. into even more dangerous positions, especially with these exterior walls open that cut the site in half. And now that they have garage control, this extensive hold from KARN & Co. may cease to exist, or may even force them to be like even more aggressive.
Yeah, gonna have to be, because forced back to the red, and they're gonna still keep opening it up, right? Just slowly inching these players out of these critical push points, and that's exactly what's happened, is they're forced now into the garage. But they're gonna find the first pick. Sledge is gonna get taken off the board, and that's gonna give the man advantage over KARN & Co. So good opening pick, even though they lost a ton of real estate, able to take somebody off who's really focused on getting rid of some of that util, specifically those castles. Now, they still have one Selma charge left. Now, they're going to have to be used on that single wall in the construction to really start to put the pressure in on the backside, because the defense can kind of just hold and bunker down now.
And you can tell you're reading where the execute is coming from for Makers, just because they have 4 players alive. Obviously, that means that really Makers can't go for the main stairs take that they probably wanted to do with Giddy down below. So that either means they go for a Logi hatch drop or a Jacuzzi execute combined with what they have here inside of construction.
start to look on in here as able to find the kill onto Carnage. Huge pick, does equalize, and just like that, that's the plant going down. Able to take sight. I got the crossfire set up, so really going to be a difficult situation here as we find ourselves in a post plant. That's Warden go down, another to follow. Bandit gets taken off the board. Castle quickly to follow. The crossfire just too much to be dealt with, but Asian coming in from the backside is able to take one. Center able to finish off that round and now puts us in a really precarious situation for Karnico.
And a thing that we talked about for Maker specifically was their ability to gap spot and find the opening picks like really effectively. And that is not only true for the early round, but that's also true for the late round as well. Packer just like walks inside from the jacuzzi breach through bathroom, and then he kills the only player in gym that can really stop that execute from Makers, because Karnico have only 2 players positioned, I think, just outside of the site in Logi, and then 1 on main stairs. And the main stairs player, or even just the Logi player on the doorway, should have been the one to walk to Jacuzzi Breach, but you had nobody really watching much of anything besides the player in weight rooms just looking out the windows hoping for someone to jump in. Makers never did that. They were biding their time and waiting for an opening, and Packer just so happened to be that person. And now we're on match point for Karnico's map pick, and I'm very scared for them, because if Makers win this map, they're going to go on Consulate, a map that they're very, very good at.
Yeah, so a bunch of pressure now. Karnico has to be perfect for 4 in a row, and while they've had some really good rounds, it seems like a little bit of a tall order here, kind of in the late round. Now, they do go for a little bit of the adaptation, right? Last time they played, they still facilitated that extension up top with the Castle, still had the slowdown capabilities, the area denial of the Goyo to block that quick attempt. The one change up here, though, is we're going to opt for the Vigil instead of the Mira, and just caught slipping. Unfortunate, doesn't look at the first shot. 2 of them ring out, and Asian's able to take Sector off the board, and that is kind of a huge player, right? That's the Thermite gone. So now you still have the 3 Selma charges, but I mean, we're still got to focus on that hatch play, especially because one of your can openers just died as Nick takes Packer off.
Packer just going for a solo entry and got isolated by Nick upstairs. And Karnico is still retaining a lot of map control around the first and second floor. It doesn't seem like Makers are off to a good start with the information gathering tools, considering the fact that they're now down to just only 3 drones. And they probably wasted a bunch of that just trying to figure out where exactly the visual is. The roam game here from Karnico works out very well, like it did in the previous round when they played the basement site for the very first time. And this extensive hold that they're doing is giving Makers a lot of issues, because they're just sending in players one by one to go into these very difficult positions where Karnico are pulling you into a trap and working together to ensure that they catch you.
Worked pretty well on those first 2, and now leaves Grim at a 7 HP as they start to take a little bit of a look inside of the bar area. So they start to put some pressure onto that extension, but like you were talking about, we still even have Bandit upstairs. So even the roamer that you thought was going to be there has already rotated back down to sight. If they catch him that he's in sight and might not know that Bandit is still up there, could have play here. So Ash taking themselves up top, and that's going to be another kill as Bino gets taken off the board. Low health for the Grim, and Ash... Oh, never mind. And no health for the Grim. This means it's a 1v5. Got to put Ash on pace for the ace to be able to bring this one back around. Said they had to be perfect for 4. Well, it looks like they're probably going to find their first one. Now, let's start the climb. They take the Vigil off the board. But that's going to be won decisively as Nick is going to be there to answer. That's going to give one to Karnico.
Yeah, and very good roam again from Karnico. And mainly just based off of kills. They also wasted a lot of utility in that round too. Not only were they planning to bandit trick the CCTV wall to really pause the utility game there from Makers, but they then just acted aggressively off of that, recognizing that the Thermite was isolated on a platform breach, and using that opportunity for him to get that wall is what garnered Karnico that very first opening kill. And then from there, Makers just had a really tough time dealing with the roam game because of really their drone game getting decimated, but also the solo entries just going in by themselves, and Karnico playing so close together, having very good refract potential and crossfires to help each other on that roam.
So back up to the gym bedroom, and here's the adaptation. It's going to introduce the tuber out to it, which I think, right, we watched that Mira get taken out very quickly the last time that they played Gym Bedroom. They were able to open up the breach, take the Mira off the board, force her into that gym position where they were able to just walk in and get the kill. So a little bit of the adaptation, going to try to slow that down as potentially Tuber going to help facilitate holding onto that Mira.
Locate and defuse the bomb.
Yeah, and also just Packer walking in from Jacuzzi Breach. So if MKERS just get that wall open again, just kind of be mindful, especially if they put MKERS in a very difficult position like they did in that previous round when they were defending that same exact site, and having MKERS put themselves in very dangerous positions where they're isolated and lurking, but Karnico just weren't necessarily paying attention this time around. It seems like they're playing more off-site into this extension over by CCTV and Cash. It's going to be aided by the windows being not reinforced, but barricaded by the castle, so that when they do have a chance to fall back, the castle barricades will protect them in doing so. Instead, I don't mean that MKERS will have to clear them.
Boy, we talk about aggression, Chaka, and it is Giddy primed and ready to send himself into the window on the stairs here. And Bandit only has one of those Bandit charges to try to trick the backside at CCTV to hold them off, because they had to dedicate more of that utility to holding on to the Mira. So a little bit of a switch up of play here, and oh my lord, if he stays here, this could be a huge play for the Amaru. Now, not going to do it. They're going to start to facilitate a secondary movement instead, going up to the top of the roof, maybe to take a look at the Logi area. It is Bandit going to be the first one to get taken out, but that's going to be vertical to take Adam off the board and equalize on the spawn. Now, Giddy able to answer, now puts us into a 4v3 with still a minute and a half left on the board. We're able to get that breach open, of course, because the Bandit only had one of the charges and was taken out quite quickly. Tuber falls, now puts us into a 4v2 and a ton of pressure onto only the Warden, who is the last alive and sitting in the cash room. So it's a little bit of a site retake here as the plant starts to go down, but they have it. They're able to claim him, and that's going to be map number 1 going to MKERS.
Map number 1 ending off in a 7-3 victory for MKERS, not even their own map pick, and they still look quite at home on the map of Clubhouse, taking Karnico's map pick away from them. And then after this, we'll be heading on into Consulate. And really, I kind of did like some of the ideas that Karnico were presenting to us. They were going for roam games. They were prioritizing trying to get the opening pick, especially on their basement defenses, when they were going for the extensive roam games. And at times it was working quite well in most of the rounds, in all of the rounds apart from 2. Karnico were able to get the opening pick most of those times, but they still weren't able to convert the round because MKERS just were able to find these opening in these gaps that Karnico kind of like presented to MKERS.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that you talked about in the pre-show as being things that were going to be super important to this round, of course, played out exactly that way. When they were able to capitalize, they found themselves with some really good round wins. But MKERS just able to pull it off, right? They just had the plan, they just had the execute, they just had the firepower, and were able to pull it off. So map 1 does go to MKERS. We're going to get ourselves ready for map number 2, which will be Consulate. And this should be an incredible map number 2, because all of the pressure is on. Got to be perfect or you're going to be out of it. Sit back, relax. When we come back, got ourselves a second map. What's up, and welcome back, fellow Siege spectators and players. If you're just joining us, you missed a heck of a map 1 here in this best of 3 quarterfinal series. I am still Whiskey Glitter, and joining me still is Chaka. What do you think? How map 1, kind of as expected?
Yep, kind of as expected. I think coming into this game, everybody has like a straightforward idea of how this was going to go. It's gonna always be a game where Makers would win it, especially given Karniko's recent struggles inside of T2 and then just outside of it. Wildcard restart, beginning of Xenon, having to then play an extra play-in match because of their game against the Wildcard Aces, and Makers, who even despite all their roster changes, still look like the best team in T2 and deservedly should be in T1.
Yeah, completely agreed with you. Everything that we talked about in the pre-show, the adaptations, we were actually even seeing them, right? Karniko was getting some of those early picks. Their potential to redirect, though, just was tough, right? It was just weren't able to come up with a secondary plan once the first part fell through. Now, takes it to Consulate, where it could be a little bit tougher, right? This is a map that Makers has been very good on. So the adaptations are going to need to be doubly so, and it's going to have to be aggressive, and it's going to have to be quick.
Yep, and specifically for Makers, if I can actually just like pull up their statistics for Consulate specifically, and this is going from the start of Swiss in Element 3 to now being into playoffs, and this is counting not only Element 3 but also BGS, XGS this season in group stage, the Wildcard Restart tournament, and then like one other league too. And they've played Consulate a total of 8 times. They've won it 6 times, lost it 2 times, so they have an 80% win rate on this map. It's a very good map for them. They played this at the beginning of the season in the XGS group stages, and they looked amazing on it against Mormon Battalion, who they just kind of like swept over, especially when they were on that attacking side, which they're starting on here on their own map pick.
Now, so we're getting into the bans here, and the first one out the gate is the Deimos. You might have a little bit more insight on this. Is this a target ban, or is this a map ban here to take the Deimos off?
I don't think it's a target ban. Karniko. Makers didn't play a lot of Deimos in the last map. I think this is just like a map specific ban. There's a ton of verticality to work with on this map, especially when you're playing on the second floor bomb site. You maybe want to send somebody down below in order to like clear somebody, say in CEO or in the meeting area, when you're working off and execute, whether you're doing an admin overclear or direct take through the CEO window, and maybe you take some early pressure through piano. And so the Deimos is a really good operator to getting you a ton of information on maybe a smoke player in the middle of the site denying the CEO window, or even somebody playing with the Nitro Soul just around the corner. It gives you a bunch of info. I think this is more map specific than anything else for Karniko.
Yeah, kind of going to be directed towards that Tachanka, right? They're bringing the Lord himself into play to hold down some of those critical push points, really use that fire to stop that plant coming in from the main breach, deny it from that window, a jump in, and of course towards the back end of the A site. So maybe, got the Deimos off the board because they wanted to use somebody who was going to be a rock and a mountain and an anchor inside of that site. And that's exactly who they're bringing, right? Doubled up on the area denial, still going to bring the Goyo out as well to stop some of that quick stuff. I like the setup by the defense, even though maybe I don't get to see the Tachanka as much. I like the versatility that it can bring to the table here.
Yep, it gives you an opportunity to play around the meeting area, especially because you put most of the Goyo fires for Karniko over by the CEO area just in case Makers were to go for the direct take, which, seeing as what is evident, Giddy takes early space over by the spiral area, and you also have somebody already in yellow too.
So just a quickness have set themselves up to be potential frags right now. And look at this, it's going to be the swing. They know that they're there, and that's going to be the barbed wire getting taken off. They can rotate out, give that space for free, and that's going to be Giddy to find the first kill onto Nick. That's the bandit gone, but it's answered back as Carnage is able to stop the flow of bleeding and take the Lion out. So a double to ring out, huge, but he doesn't know that Amaru is right there, or at least he's not putting any directed attention towards it. So Asian to find center off the board, and that's going to be Mute getting taken down. And just like that, we're in a 1v3, and it's all going to rest on the shoulders of the Dokkaebi, who is still sitting outside of sight, of course, holding on to that cross angle.
Just try to go for a rush play, and it gets immediately shut down from Karniko, are just on their feet and ready for the gunfights. Now it's all Tabino in a 1v3. He has Next to no info apart from maybe Carnage B being in the middle of console office, and that's given away by the fires going out and Bino grabbing that refrag off of
Triple attempt on the camera, but he does able to get it, take away that intel, does put himself into a lot more winnable position, especially because there's still a minute and 22 left on the board. That is plenty of time for Bino to start to put some work in. And a 1v2 is a lot more doable than a 1v3. So the potential for him to bring it out is huge here. The pressure, though, is going to be on the Dokkaebi to start to actually get that next kill. Kind of in that hold position, waiting to see if somebody might unnecessarily throw a body here. And that's going to be the swing coming up. Is going to find one now into a 1v1. This incredible.
What?
No way did he bring it back. Huge. And that just speaks to it, Chaka. The individual capabilities of every member on this team. Bino pulling that back around in a huge way.
And I thought like Carnico with the last 2 players alive had like a crossfire on that entry, but like again, just like how it was on that one defensive round where they're defending not bathroom, but gym and bedroom on the clubhouse game, it happens again here. Nobody's really watching anything. And they just kind of like give up isolated picks. Carnage B dying on a desk. You have a swing coming in from here. And then like the Warden isn't really helping much of anything there. MKERS do, again, they have somebody who's individually talented in Giddy, who's played on the Carnage roster before, has won Challenger League with Reality TV, and also has won Element 1 as well, the first iteration of Element. And you have him doing it again here because of Carnico just not really playing too well off of each other and reading the room.
Yeah, absolutely. The first missed shots when Bino took the shots onto the breach and he missed them, that was the prime opportunity for the Warden to take the swing and win the round for his team. But instead, they fed him one at a time, and if you feed Bino one at a time, he's going to eat, and that's exactly what he did. MKERS finds themselves one up here as they take it down to the basement now, and gonna maybe try to set some pace here, right? You see the castle come out, and I like it, but is it individual? Look at this. They're already putting in and taking up a ton of real estate, and just like that, Packer gonna find the first kill onto Nick, and that's the castle gone, and there's your extension dealt with. Now they still have Legion up here to try to be an impactful player, but now he's alone, and that's gonna make it a little bit tougher.
Yeah, and he has to try and sit here and find a pick here against MKERS, because if he just gives up a lot of map control, then that's vertical in favor of the attacking team. And with the buck on the board, if they have the vertical control, you don't really have a reason to sit here and play around site, and it just kind of makes playing around the site so uncomfortable. You see him get a pick back. That's on to Packer, who originally found that gap in the opening pick there for MKERS. But still, you have vertical control retained for now. Asian just has to keep getting a little bit freaky, but Giddy may catch him off guard just sneaking in from server.
Yeah, he's coming around the backside, and it doesn't look like he's even turned to look that way as he starts to make his way up the spiral area, and that's going to be Giddy to find vertical off the board. You called it, my friend, and now puts him heavy with the body balance in favor of nobody as a quick double rings out, but the flow of bleeding has stopped as Center's able to take Rice down. Now puts us into a 2v2, and this feels like it still could be pretty winnable for the defense here, because Smoke still has those 2 canisters in hand, is going to be able to stop any sort of that push that's coming in.
Definition is on the back push on the backside too, and it doesn't seem like MKERS might not have a lot of info on it until now. They know that he's in the direct corner, but he destroys Center, and he has a triple kill on the round. May find a quad if he can connect onto Bino, who's being held at bay by those very same smoke grenades that you mentioned, and now it means that he has to readjust his entry elsewhere. 55 seconds, no teammates on the board, and he has the diffuser in hand. There's possibly no way that he's going to get a plant down, and he makes a quick dash for the spiral stairs.
That's right. They heard it, right? Barbed wire goes off, and they start to put the smoke canisters there, and that's the last of them, as now it's just going to rely on the traditional sense, a little bit of that gunplay. Couple of pre-fires. Looks good for the defense, but we've seen this before. The cross is set up, and they're going to be able to find it. Carnico going to be able to take their first round, tie us up 1-1.
A good reaction off of the early pick and map control that MKERS got in the early round, and their response was just to be aggressive, then hold their ground, and have Asian just kind of like lurk around the map and give Makers a lot of trouble, which he did. He got a quad kill, I believe, by the end of that round. And also Makers, or Karnico rather, the names mixed up. Karnico's very first pick inside of that round. And the one player that I said that I felt like needed to step up personally to me, while we both agreed that Vertical is going to be the player to watch here, Asian is also somebody that I want to be watching too, because again, he doesn't have the best stats inside of Element. He's the lowest rated player on his team as an entry player. And that round proves that he's not, that he can show up when Karnico need him to. And I mean, do they need him now on one of Maker's best match.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's sitting at 4-1. So you were right. He's the impactful player and showed it there. What a huge round, especially that second kill when he just took the shot and just deleted him. So take it back up to the second floor now, and they're just going to run it back, right? They're going to try it, the strat again. They feel like they had it all going in their way. The thing is that Makers tried a rush strat last time, so it's going to be a little bit more probably of a traditional take. Will this still hold up as a good hold? I guess we'll find out together.
Looks like Makers do want to try and clear over from the admin side. They brought the Grimbees in order to help make clearing the admin area a lot easier. You can also argue that the Grimbees could be used from where the IQ was standing as well to potentially try and get a position over of where the bandit is. But ultimately, what you want to be using the Grim for is for this admin over clear, especially because Karn & Co have fully extended over by admin with a bunch of utility, not only bringing shields to sport, but they also have the warden in a hallway, and they have the Goyo canisters around the map too, specifically on the meeting doorway, but also over in the hallway where the warden is standing.
Yeah, so it is a good setup. They brought some stuff specifically to deal with it, right? Dokeby to help suss that out. IQ going to be vital here. Is this just gaining a ton of intel from her gadget. Now, they did make the push up here. As you can see, Ace starting to make that push in from admin. A little bit of a distraction as they open up that triple wall there. But nothing really done as of yet. Grim does take a little bit of damage, but really it's just kind of been this set up and wait type scenario, and that really is going to start playing into the favor of Karn & Co because of the area denial and the stall game that they have on the board. First kill is going to be on to Vertical, who inside of 3 hasn't been able to find himself a kill just yet. Carnage, though, does stop Giddy. Low health scenario here for the T'Chakis. He's put on that 5 HP and a dream. Jeez. Adam to find one, Packer to follow up, and Rice to stop the flow of bleeding. Now takes us into a 2-2s. Carnage is able to take Packer off the board. It's a low health scenario on the side of the defense, and the plant is starting to go down. So some of that fire that is supposed to stop this, not going to be quite effective yet, and they're going to get it. We're in a post-plant scenario. Quick free fire outside doesn't amount to anything, and now it's a retake here as they need to find their way back into sight. Going to get Grim off the board, but it's going to be traded out as the triple kill happens, and that's going to be the down onto Ace. Huge. Going to be able to put Karn & Co on their second round as they were able to facilitate another up top.
Yeah,
or, I mean, not another, to find their first up top.
Yep, and the response there from Karn & Co was very, very good, especially playing around their utility, further whittling away at Maker's HP. When they did find that opening onto hallway, making it very easy for them to then try to advance onto site when they cleared the warden from the hallway. And when they tried to then move on to site, with Giddy trying to make an entry through, immediately Goyo canisters go up. You have a lot of issues for Makers when it comes to the trade games. They can't do it quite as effectively. That's just Karn & Co just putting a lot of emphasis over by that area of the map. Makers really had nothing as well to clear the utility. Once they then got control of the hallway area, they had no Twitch to get rid of the Goyo fires, and so their entry into site was made even harder. And I like that play from Karn & Co because they just kind of like put themselves back. They knew that they didn't have to over challenge because they have a good chunk of utility over by the meeting area.
Yeah. definitely played out in their favor as they were able to find one, which means we're going to find ourselves on the Tersh site here. And somebody that we haven't got to see tonight, Fenrir, going to be brought on the board. And yeah, he had his nerf, but he's still that impactful player because he's just able to take away some of that sight. Now, obviously, your pre-fires are going to mean a lot through that purple cloud, but it definitely can stop the flow and set the pace as they're trying to make their way inside. So I like it. But on the other side, it's all aggression, right? Dokkaebi and Lion sussing out that roam game. You're going to have Dokkaebi getting up top and taking a bunch of that real estate very quickly, and to be aided with the blitz, which, you know, when taking space can be just incredibly difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, trap ops here for KARN is going to be very useful when trying to snuff out the lurks here for makers, because even though like you have Packers just like pushing up yellow, or you have somebody like randomly going up spiral, that doesn't really indicate the full push for makers. They're just filling out the map, filling out where these gaps are from makers. And if you bring traps like the Melusi Banshees and Carnage on the Fenrir, then there won't be many gaps to exploit, and it'll force makers to clear a lot of utility and waste a lot of their own time doing so.
Yeah, so a ton of intel being had here by the Grim and the Dokkaebi. They take a flash as they start to come inside, and he's going to find the kill, the double. Huge play. Giddy's just able to come in and steal sight. Packer to find another one, and just like that, it is now down to a 5v1 as the Blitz is starting to make their way towards the mute, and it's going to find that round flawlessly.
Yeah, and I'm very surprised that that the player inside of console office didn't move as soon as the flashes went in. Probably thought they could spray past the flashes and then hit a lucky shot onto a Carnico player. But at that moment, I think that Carnico would have just done best to try and like back off and then like strike back at a better time, because makers were very set in stone on just like taking the space very early, like we've mentioned previously in a pre-show, and they just kind of like went in and absolutely decimated Carnico on that top floor hold that they were trying to do above the actual bomb site, which is kind of funny because makers just didn't interact with the bomb site at all. They just kind of like caught Carnico with their pants down with a bunch of utility and cut off angles that Carnico just didn't really play well around.
Yeah, and I think that when not backing off when the flash came through, I think in a normal AR or SMG battle, he might have won that with the pre-fire because it takes so long to get in the window, but came in with a shotgun, you know, and that's in the close quarter combat realm. Of course, the shotgun's going to play out key, and they find the double, and it just fell apart. So take it back down to the basement where we've seen some success before, and switch it up a little bit. Still lean into that trap, though. Like, I enjoy when the cap can comes out, especially when it's late round, right? You haven't been looking for it. So you're not necessarily going to check every single door and every single window, but it only takes one, right? One explosion, one down for you to know that it is definitely something that's you're gonna have to pay attention to, and it's gonna slow it down. Asian finds the first kill, and it's huge as they take Giddy off the board. That's gonna be the entry gone and the body balance in favor of Carnico very early in the
Using Giddy on the entry as well, like you mentioned, and ultimately that gets rid of the Ash, and that's probably not bad or good or bad in the grand scheme of things for makers in terms of the operator pick, but that's bad because they've lost the man down, and it seems like they're very much struggling with getting consistent info on where, if there are any other players around the first floor, despite the Dokkaebi calls. And it doesn't really look like they're advancing past where they already are. One player's in the lobby, the other's by spiral, and they haven't really moved on to other areas of the map because they're so concerned about what's happening over by servers.
Yeah, and yeah, that extension being huge, and look at that, there it is. The cap can kill is going to ring through and take Adam off the board, and that's going to put the body balance in a huge way here towards Karn and Co. And now is going to allow them to just get back down into sight, hold on, play for the refrag. You don't have to throw any bodies unnecessarily. This starts to look pretty good for Karn & Co. But we've seen this situation before, getting a little aggressive, over peaking, some of the little mistakes that have cost them the round. Hopefully in this one, they're going to hold back just a little bit and only swing when necessary.
And Center's already rotated as well towards the Dominoes wall too. Karn & Co have to understand that this is happening just so that they can deny the direct entry into sight, because Makers don't really have a lot of utility to force their way in. They do have somebody going on a back push, and that's Packer, and it may just give them the edge they need in this round.
And now look, holding on to it. It's got the idea that somebody's going to be coming this way, ready for the swing. It's an easy kill. Packer takes Nick off the board and now is going to claim some of that, those cameras, give him some of that intel. Now, the one inside has already been dealt with, of course, but that's going to be the smoke to take Bino down as Carnage puts himself on the triple kill, now into a 4v2. A lot of pressure starting to be put onto the last two players of Maker alive, and the crossfire set up. Rice going to get taken down, and now it's all up to Ace. Going to be dealt with easily.
So it's another successful round on the basement site for Carnico this time around as well. And I really, again, like the hold that they were trying to do. And they just kind of like, they fawned like a very heavy offside hold with the first floor hold, got the opening pick, fell off almost immediately, further wasting Maker's time when it came to that mid to late round play that they were trying to do. And then on top of that, just whittling away at the man count as well for Makers when somebody was trying to find a gap somewhere else by themselves, like Makers tend to do when they can't figure out what else to do. They send somebody to try and find an opening, and sometimes that is a very risky play. Other times, not really, and it can net them a round win, but in this time it just didn't. And I really, again, like the way that Carnico played it. They played heavy into the information denial, shot drones as they retreated, and that further whittled away at Maker's ability to win that round because of their lack of info on the remaining few players of Carnico who weren't even around the first floor like they originally thought.
Exactly. So now this is kind of a not make or break round, but this is an important round because it is the last for Carnico to go on defense, and they're going to have to try some of that stuff that was very unsuccessful on Clubhouse. Playing time being a huge factor in that. So this is a very important round to put yourself on that 4-2 split, because if Makers goes into this 3-3, then it feels like it could be a little bit of an easy cleanup on the defense because it's consulate, right? So back up to the top, back up to the second floor, and they're just going to run the strat back. Had the potential to win it the first time they ran it, did win it the second time. Tachanka going to try to be that important factor and deny that area for as long as they can yet again. So already made their way inside of the lobby. So they're going to start to put some vertical pressure on here. Buck to start doing, taking out the bandit from below, and he's going to find it quite easily. And that's going to give the body balance over to Makers and allow them to get really kind of take their time with the rest of this, although we know they won't.
It's easy read from Makers as well, who just understood that that was going to be happening, especially saying the bandit just physically do it as well, and they just kind of like timed it very correctly, killing Nick in the opening round. Now they have a wall, a free breach open that directly cuts in between the sites if they wanted to try and rotate through the baguette desk. They can't do that anymore with the main wall open. They've also just got a player down on the process and removed a Nitro Cell 2 here from Carnico, meaning that the late round utility here for them is going to be made even weaker now that that bandit is gone.
Yeah, Adam to find one. Center is going to take Carnage off the board, and the plant's starting to go down as they start to push the defense trying to push their way back into sight. And it's going to be a post-plant scenario, and they're going to take Asian down. All the pressure now put onto the board, and takes a couple of shots, is revealed by the Bees, and it's going to be a flawless round and take us to a 3-3 as we go into the back end of the half of the second match.
And very good round as well from Makers. They get the opening pick, and then they just kind of like flood in from a bunch of different positions, further confusing Carnico on where the exact execute would be coming from. And now a 3-3 half going into their defensive side is very good for Consulate, which next to probably like your Skyscrapers, your Night Haven Labs, I'm trying to think of another defensive side of the map, maybe a Clubhouse, for example. Oregon's not in a map pool, but when it was in a map pool, it was probably the most defender side of the map. Consulate's up there as well with some of the highest defensive win rates in that we have in Siege right now. So Makers getting a 3-3 half going on to their defensive split, especially giving their defensive win rate in Xenon so far, is actually very, very good. And Carnico need to be in tip-top shape now going on to their attack.
That's right. We're going to need to see some pace here out of Karn & Co., right? It still take your time in setting up, right? Still get your plan in place, but you're going to have to do it a little bit quicker, especially because now Makers, knowing that that's your game style and already having kind of defeated it, or not kind of, mostly taken it out on Clubhouse, they leaned into it. Right, they leaned into the time wasters. They brought the Goyo and the smoke out to really help facilitate that when they get down into that 30 seconds left and they're going to try to go in for the execute, it's going to be denied. So quick is going to have to be the name of the game for KARN & Co., not just in entries and real estate, but also getting set up for the plant.
Seems like KARN & Co. have a lot of toys to play with in this round as well, considering the fact that they brought a lot of utility with the Capital boats, forest drones, and the Incandelas, as well as Nomads, to take control of the first floor area, while also ensuring that they have a push coming in from the admin side, using those Capital boats to make everything easier and further take space and remove some from Makers, especially when they look at this hallway extension that Makers are going for. They don't have a shield in a vending machine area, and Azami is banned, so that means that if KARN & Co. just decide to push, Makers will be forced to take gunfights because they don't really have a lot of utility protecting them.
That's right. And speaking of pushing, they're already making their way in through admin as the Yin Candelas start to ring out. They're going to do a little bit of damage onto the Dokkaebi, and by a little bit, I mean 4 HP and a dream left. But it's a one-shot headshot game, right? So not necessarily Dokkaebi being out of it. C4 does ring out, and they're able to start pushing up off the back of those Yin Candelas. Sends it deep in there, looking to isolate this player, Bino, inside of there, and they do. He's down onto the back end, but Center's there to help you back him up.
Why?
That's going to be, gets taken down as Nick finds one. Karn is to take Backer off the board, and it's starting to fall apart for the defense here, as now we find ourselves into a 4v2, and in the midst of it, going to get a Rotero drone in, try to push that player back off so they can take a little bit more real estate. Now, it is a 4v2, but it is a really low health scenario here for the defense, so just a couple of bullets to take the rest of these players down, and there's the Flores drone, the Rotero drone, to stem or stop them from pushing up, finds another one, takes a shot at him to find Nick, and now it puts us into a 3v2, which is quite a bit more winnable. But as Capital goes down now into a 2v2 with 45 seconds left and incredibly low health for the attacking side of it, Nomad, the last one let alive as the Cap Can trap goes down. 30 HP to try to get it done here in the last 30 seconds. Sends a flash out. It's not going to affect anybody. The crossfire setup going to go for the plant here, which is kind of maybe one of the only things that they can do, right? So they're pushing up. They're going to take this together. The double swing from each side of it. I'm going to feed him ones, I'm hoping, right? Waiting for his partner to get set up, goes into the hallway, gets down, and that's going to be the round for the defense. Sheesh.
And I don't even know how that happened for KARN & Co. Like, they get really good control over by admin. They punish some over aggression from Makers who had, I don't know, they just didn't really have the idea to fall back and play more around their utility, considering the attack that KARN & Co. went for, it being very one-dimensional, nobody pushing up the spiral stairs. You could easily take advantage of that by just playing more towards site, using the smoke grenades, Goyo canisters, all the utility that you did have that KARN & Co. just never cleared. And towards the end of it, you'll see it here. KARN & Co. just gave off a lot of opening picks, players just rushing forward, not being patient enough for the execute. And KARN & Co. just never really completed that round like they probably should have. And they never took the round win like they deserve because of just their hubris. Like, that round theoretically just, I mean, physically and mentally just doesn't make any sense to me.
It feels like they got in unexpecting to even themselves, and they're like, okay, now what do we do, right? We did the thing, we took the space, we killed the guys, now what? And then in that now what phase, they were unfortunately just not able to capitalize. Low health scenario was the disaster for them as they were just able to find their ones and clean up the round. Huge round for the Makers, and shows why they are the top of the T2 and why they could be, of course, in T1. So now we're going to watch down to the basement, right? And this is going to be a little bit tougher. There's going to be a dedication to the verticality because you're going to have to be. Makers really good at playing that site, just like we just watched. And with the Mira on the board and the slowdown capability of the smoke, this is going to be a very difficult defense to get through.
Roamers upstairs too, and KARN & Co. in the previous rounds, or I want to say on some rounds of Clubhouse, had some really big issues with clearing out the roamers, and it seems like it's going to continue here on Consulate with in the 8th round, Giddy gets the very first kill, kills Nick on that buck. Somebody who's very good at setting up the vertical, you still have the ram up on the board. So, I mean, it's kind of a saving grace here for Karnico. The issue is that they just lost a man early, and Nick is on a very important operator for this execute that Karnico want to go for. Of course, they are going to still try and go for a top foot clear. They have somebody coming in from the admin side, another coming in up the spiral stairs. And they have to hope that this pinch works out because maybe Giddy will snip this out and run away, but no, he gets cut off by the yellow stairs player.
So DMR rings out and equalizes on the man advantage here, and start to see Smoke push up a little bit to help Mute, who is sitting still in that first floor area. So put some pressure back up on top, really keep that roam and pace alive so that the last few seconds for Karnico are going to be stressed. No way. Shotgun comes out. He's able to find a double, just completely uncontested, unlooked for, undroned, and is able to find it easily. Huge play. Now puts a huge pressure on Karnico.
Asian going up the yellow stairs finally gets the kill onto Center. I will not lie to you. I thought that Center was a teammate, and I was like, wow, this teammate is holding a Mossberg awfully close to his own teammate. And then I was like, oh wait, that's not a teammate, that's Center. Karnico never really had a flake drone set up, and the Smoke just freely walks up the yellow stairs. Now suffering a one-man deficit here, two makers who is still wanting to go for more up on the first floor, and this is something that they like to do. They never give up on going for these flanks in the late round to make the execute so much harder here for Karnico, who don't even have the garage wall open now. That's going to be completed. They have the cutoff here on yellow stairs, but I mean, this guy could just get destroyed here.
And does. Able to take that shot, prone, pwned, and then owned, and now it's the shots at yellow, and Adam's going to find Carnage, and that is going to be a very decisive round for MKERS.
Yeah, and again, seemed like Karnico struggled a lot with their info, not only with the early round. Well, I mean, the early round went pretty well from them. I mean, they died to a spawn peak, and then they pinched out Giddy up on the first floor, or on the second floor, but then Center just slips through the cracks, sneaks up yellow, gets 2 picks for his liking. He's standing right next to someone looking like their teammate, and I don't think Karnico just were none the wiser. And then came down to the execute. You only have Asian just being able to hold a cutoff from bottom yellow, and they didn't even get the breach open because of the super out canisters. So Karnico just had a very tough time throughout that whole entire round, and that's the one thing that you can say about MKERS that's really consistent about them. They are going to make it tough from you from the early round to the mid to the late, because they are a very aggressive team. They know when to slip through the cracks, and they've done that so many times in this game against Karnico.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's why we're sitting at a 5-3, MKERS 1 away from that coveted match point scenario. So now we're going to see ourselves on the Tersh site here for MKERS. First time we're going to see it for them this evening. And it's kind of what you'd expect, right? We've got some development and some investment into the roam game, but it's the upstairs hold, the Frost and the Warden, that's going to be extremely difficult to deal with, especially because they're relying on those Candelas and those smokes to really start to push some of those players out of that critical push point scenario.
Yeah, and one thing that was very prevalent for MKERS when they were on their attacking side is they used a crap load of utility to try and force out these roamers and make them uncomfortable. Asian already made his way through Visa up the surface stairs, but that's been read by Bino. That's the first kill going in favor of MKERS. Asian is down, one of the best players on Consulate for Karnico, and that's a crucial entry pick for Karnico to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. So now can just kind of rest on some of that trade game here onto the top floors. They really just don't have to make any huge moves. They can hold the second floor and become vital in the end of it, except for Rice is going to get up there and take Bino off the board, but it's going to be traded back immediately as Packer's there. The buddy system's in place, and he's able to still hold on to the top of Spiral. So they've got a huge hold here. It's 1, 2, 3 players still up there, leaving one down on the very first inside of sight to be able to anchor down. So gonna have to get up there and still push these players. They don't have a choice but to take this 2F control still.
Yeah, I mean, Candelas might not even be able to try and force their way in. It looks like they want to try and take some horror. some of the utility that they have in their back pockets. Maybe you send Vertical up here, but by himself against 4 KARN and Co players who seemingly just know that he's here with Center rotating over by the yellow stairs. Well, no, maybe he doesn't know. But either way, it's going to be very tough for KARN and Co to fight back from.
It's the shotgun able to swing and found another one. They push from the backside, so he's going to come up on 2 of them and just shotguns for everybody. You get one, and you get one. They're going to find another decisive round, and now it's a very rock and a hard spot here for KARN and Co, right? They put themselves on a match point scenario, on a quarterfinal point scenario. They have to be perfect for 3, or this one is done data. Move on. GG's go next.
It's going to be hard to be perfect from 3, considering the fact that they're on the attacking side of Consulate. And the MKERS are a very good defensive team. They've been, I think, the best team in the league in terms of their defensive win rate. And now that they're on the defensive side of Consulate, probably their best map, they're at home here. They're very comfortable, and KARN and Co aren't. They're very uncomfortable and fragmented when it comes to these early round clears that they're trying to do. Sending Asian in by himself, he gets smoked by Bino. And then KARN and Co just seem like they're lost for ideas from there, even despite having good problem-solving operators like the Ying Candelas, or like Ying with the Candelas. In order to sit here and create space, KARN and Co just couldn't necessarily do that on the top floor. MKERS never allowed them to. And so now we're sitting, like you said, on match point. KARN and Co staring at the bottom of the barrel, and their season in XGS, their journey in XGS, might just end in this very round.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So that becomes the next question, Shaka, right? It's not that KARN and Co is necessarily losing these rounds, but that MKERS is winning them and doing it decisively. So what becomes the win condition? What can KARN and Co do to suss this out? Is it more people with buddy system going to suss out these roamers? Should we be taking this fight on 3v1 instead of, like a 2v1? I mean, what can KARN and Co on attack do to be perfect for 3 more rounds?
I think it's just like try and play more together. Again, sending Asian in by himself just isn't working. And when you send him in by himself with Diffuser in admin, it's kind of like, well, what is he actually going to do from here? He opens up the admin wall, so that means that the player inside of admin moves himself back, and Nyx finds the opening kill onto Packer, and that's a smoke down, so that means that this meeting execute, rather the late round for MKERS, when it comes to the meeting execute, is going to be made even more difficult or weaker because you lost those smoke grenades.
Yeah. Oh man, couple of shots through the drone hole does some damage onto the Ying, or onto the floors, excuse me, but they're going to find a second kill. As Bandit, his life is going to be forfeit. Now puts him into a 5v3, starting to look good for the attack here, but this is the problem, is anybody can step up, right? Adam's able to take Asian down, and so the body balance gets a little bit closer as the proxy alarm goes off, revealing the location of the Capital. It's a low health scenario on 2 of the members from KARN and Co. As this got a 54 and a 30, so just a couple of bullets to be able to take them down, and that's kind of what we've seen all game, right? Bits and pieces of these players getting taken out, and then when it comes to the late round, it seems like those Legion goos that are going to slow them down and stop it completely, or potentially even get the kill. Takes a swing in, and that's going to find a double for Bino, a triple for Bino. They just said, I'm going to go ahead and take it right now. They all pushed, they all lost, and MKERS moving on.
And it's MKERS again winning the second map 7-3 by the same scoreline. Just continuing on their great form throughout Xenon, and also from their good performances inside of the wildcard restart. Now going into semis, they're confirmed for that. And I mean, this might be a team that you just book straight to the grand final just based off of their performances throughout T2 and T3, and even in that off-brand T1 tournament in the wildcard restart. I say off-brand, it's not really off-brand, that's kind of mean to say. Either way, it's a very solid match from MKERS, and even when the rounds looked lost, they were able to recover them, punishing KARN and Co for being ever so aggressive. And KARN and Co just couldn't really capitalize off of the mid advantages that they were given because of some of MKERS' more aggressive plays that they were trying to pull off. And, well, I mean, that's the end for KARN and Co here in XGS.
That's right. It was a valiant attempt, but what are you going to do? The other team's MKERS, right? What are you even going to do? They just look so flawless and executed well, and of course just had every single counter strat ready. Not only that, but the gaps that shot that you talked about in the pre-show that Makers was so good on, they just continued to do it again and again, seeming to come out of nowhere and find those triple kills, just like here at the very end of it.
And just a very solid match from Karnico. I mean, there's not really much to say about this matchup, I'm afraid, because like from the beginning to like now, it's always been just a very straightforward match. People have always said that they thought, or well, people just outside of the broadcast today were like, well, this seems like a very straightforward game. Makers are obviously going to win, given how good they are and how much Karnico have struggled over the past few months. And I mean, it kind of just ends here tonight. It wasn't really much of a contest. I mean, you had some rounds where Karnico were giving Makers some issues, especially with some of their extensive roam games on both Clubhouse and Consulate, and they were trying very hard to disrupt Makers in the early to mid round, and it worked to some extent. But then when they got onto the attack, they never really did anything to help the roam clears. They never really got started when it came to then getting into the mid to late round. And we saw why Makers are very good at at recovering their rounds when they lose that opening pick, because teams like Karnico tend to just get like over aggressive and they don't really work together to formulate and execute.
Yeah. So it was a GG's, Makers moving on. And now going to get a chance to potentially talk about it a little bit, find out exactly what was going on during those rounds. Not quite yet. So yeah, Consulate, you said it. It looks super great for Makers, and they of course find another one. They're just too good at what they're doing currently, right? It's not even like regular strats, right? It's not like they're coming up with something special. They're just pushing in, finding the kills, getting the entries, relying on any single one of the members. And if you looked at the KDs too at the end of it, I mean, it was almost exactly everybody having the same sort of kills, or within one or two of each other. It's just the gameplay and the communication between them was absolutely insane.
Yeah, and that's even with fitting like center into the roster for Tristan played with them for I think like towards the end of XGS season 7, and then or XGS season 7 in the group stages, and then he also played throughout the qualifiers and the actual games for the wildcard restart tournament. I almost forgot what to call them, and I did forget what to call them, that's why I didn't mention it. But anyways, regardless of that, we do have an interview ready, and I want to know who it's with because I didn't get told. Okay, it's Packer. That makes a lot of sense. So we will be interviewing Packer from the Makers team after that really nice win against Karnico. Packer, I'm assuming you're content with what the game was, considering that I feel like everybody knew you were just going to win it anyways.
I mean, yeah, we're the best T2 team. We should be a T1 team at this point. So even with a sub, we should still beat Karnico. The last time they beat us in wildcard restart, they played a good game, but we had some difficulties because we were on a break for 10 days after winning Element, so we didn't really have any like practice, and we just showed up and played the game, and they played better than us that day, unfortunately. But as we're back to proving that we're still the best team.
Okay, so I do have a question about the roster, because I know for like that game through the wildcard restart when you guys were playing against Karnico and you did lose. On the Liquipedia, it said that you didn't have like 2 players on there, and I know for like the games in the wildcard restart after the qualifiers, you had Adam and Tristan. Are those 2 like implemented into the roster permanently, and how are you guys making sure that you can assimilate them properly?
Yes, our roster is me, Giddy, Bino, Tristan, and Adam. That's our 5. Wildcard restart in the quals, we had Woos and Adam playing, and Adam at the time was playing for Kobe, because we were waiting for the decision for Kobe. But I mean, we're adding them. It's an easy fix. I mean, they're great players. They should both be in Pro League. So it's not really that hard. We just had to adjust our system to get back to like beating consistently pro teams. Like we just beat OXG in that wildcard restart. We had a very close game against SSG, and we're just starting out. That was off like 3 days of practice. So when we keep improving and learn our system and get to the point of like we have really good cohesion, then no Pro League team, every Pro League team should actually have to put in like a lot of work to play us and beat us.
Yeah, and that was what I wanted to talk about like specifically was like your system and like how are you guys really effective in fitting in like someone like Adam, who I think is sort of similar. He is similar to Kobe in terms of like his role. Like he's an entry player. He's very good at getting the open picks. He's very quick to get into the building off of like good teamwork from you guys. Like what is your system to make sure that he can actually do that properly?
I would say he plays more roles like Woo's, but he plays more aggressive than Woo's. I think Tristan kind of plays more like Kobe, in my opinion. But for Adam, like it's very easy. I just have to put him in a spot. He'll communicate to us like what he needs for us to do, and for him to like take these early gunfights, because he takes these early gunfights off of gaps. On defense, he's just a shooter. Like he's just nasty. So he's just gonna take those fights with ease and win. But I mean, our team right now is very good, like just straight gun skill wise, and we just had to work on the strategy part so that we could get back to like where we were, like I was saying.
Yeah, and I noticed that a lot when like you guys were playing your attacks on both club and like consulate. At times it really did work when you were, especially when you guys were like a man down. I noticed you were trying to do it a couple of times, like send yourself in, see if you can find an opening somewhere. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Yeah. And I kind of like that idea. It's a very fun strategy. It's something that kind of like confused me at first when I saw it, because I was like, why are you just sending yourself in below? You're just asking to get killed. But then like you guys make it work because of how good you are individually. So I guess like now that you're going up against Mormon Battalion, which has Exige and Xer, what are you expecting from that game in terms of like the overall play style? Because I know that they're a slow team just like KARN and Co.
Chaos. I mean, every time we play those guys, it's chaos. So that's what I kind of expect. Even if they are slow, like they're doing some like random stuff that we can't really expect. I won't be there for the semis and the finals because I have some other regiments, but my team should win the game. Like, I mean, there's no reason even without me we shouldn't lose XGS. Like, we should lose XGS. Like, no matter who we get, whoever's subbing, like, we are still the best team.
All right. Do you have any closing remarks for the interview?
GG's to KARN. Love the boys on that team. Sorry for all the shit talking and banner. It was just troll at the end of the day. It's not that deep. And I wish them the best. And it was nice talking to you. And I hope everyone has a good day.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually like a really good interview. I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't really like doing interviews. I don't like putting myself out there just because. But I think because Packer likes to talk about strategies. He likes to talk about his team. He likes to talk about Siege, and it makes it easier when somebody just likes to do those things. And he's just a very easy person to talk to. It was a very nice interview from Packer, and I appreciate that very much. But I mean, Glitter, 2-0 for Makers. We expected it.
Yeah, it was kind of along the lines of what we talked about. We needed KARN & Co to step up in a big way, and they just weren't able to quite get it done today. It means no bank. It's over. We're going to see more Siege, though, coming at you. Still have another best of 3 coming up. But for us, it is we are going to bid you adieu. So if you sit back, relax, when you come back, you're going to have some more Siege.